I know the feeling you're scrolling through a sea of mini PCs that all promise desktop-class power in a coffee table footprint, only to get one that looks slick in the pictures, but feels like a glorified media player when you actually need to edit a video or run a few virtual machines. That hesitation is real, and it's why I'm diving into the Beelink SER8 today. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last week testing it on my home office desk, comparing it to a mid-range laptop and a small tower I already own, so I can tell you whether this box lives up to the hype or just adds another line item to your maybe-later list. First off, the SER8 size is the kind of thing that makes you smile. At roughly the dimensions of a showbox, it tucks neatly behind a monitor, in a kitchen cabinet, or even on a bedside table if you're into streaming movies in bed. That's the obvious win for anyone who has limited desk real estate or wants a clutter-free workspace. But tiny doesn't always mean low maintenance, and that's where the real questions start. Does the little chassis accommodate the big performance claims? And can you actually use that power without overheating or constant fan whine? The heart of the machine is an AMD Ryzen 7 8745HS, an 8-core, 16-thread chip that clocks up to 4.9 GHz. On paper that's the kind of CPU you'd expect in a thin and light gaming laptop. In practice, the SER8 handles everyday productivity like a champ. I ran multiple Microsoft Office suites, had a Zoom call while a 4K YouTube video streamed in the background, and still had enough headroom to compile a small C++ project. The system felt snappy, Windows opened in a blink, and switching between Chrome tabs was buttery smooth. If you're a remote worker who needs to hop between spreadsheets, email, and a web-based CRM, you'll notice that speed without any extra tweaking. The graphics side is where the SER8's integrated Radeon 780M really shows its teeth. It's not a dedicated RTX card, but for light creative work, think Photoshop edits, Canva design, or occasional 1080p video rendering, it holds up. I tested a 10-minute 1080p YouTube video export in DaVinci Resolve, and the render completed in just under 5 minutes, which is respectable for a mini PC. For anyone dabbling in game streaming at 720p or doing light 3D modeling, the Radeon graphics give you a usable experience without needing an external GPU enclosure. Now, let's talk ports. The SER8 packs HDMI 2.1, DisplayPort 1.4, and a USB 4 Type-C that doubles as a Thunderbolt-compatible lane. In real-world terms, that means you can drive a 4K 60Hz monitor over HDMI, a second 1440p screen via DisplayPort, and still have a fast external SSD or docking station attached through the USB 4 hub. I set it up with a 27-inch 4K TV for media consumption, a 24-inch 1440p monitor for work, and a USB-C external SSD for quick file transfers. The triple display workflow was seamless. There was no flicker, no noticeable lag, and the system correctly identified each screen without manual configuration. If you need a compact hub for multiple monitors and a fast peripheral, this is a big plus. Connectivity beyond the visual side is solid as well. Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2 give you modern wireless speeds, but the real kicker is the 2.5 gigabits Ethernet port. In my apartment the Wi-Fi signal can be spotty, so I plugged the SER8 straight into the router. The wired connection gave me consistent upload speeds near 200 megabits per second, which mattered when I was sending large design files to a client. If you're a gamer or a content creator who relies on stable, low-latency internet, that port alone justifies the step up from a generic mini PC. On the downside, the tiny case does constrain cooling. The SER8 uses a single 92mm fan that spins up noticeably under sustained loads. When I ran a CPU stress test for 15 minutes, the fan hit a high pitch that was audible across the room. It didn't throttle the CPU. Temperatures peaked around 80 C, which is safe, but the acoustic profile is something to be aware of if you need a silent office environment. The fan profile is fixed, There's no way to lower the speed without risking thermal spikes, so you'll either accept the whine or tuck the unit farther from your ears. Another practical limitation is upgradability. The SER8 comes with 32GB of DDR5 RAM and a 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD already installed. The RAM is soldered, so you can't add more later, and the SSD sits on a single M.2 slot that's occupied. If your workflow expands and you need, say, 64GB of RAM for heavy virtual machines, you're out of luck. The same goes for adding a second drive. There's no room for a 2.5-inch bay or an additional M.2 slot. This isn't necessarily a deal-breaker for most users, but it does mean you have to get the right configuration up front. Battery isn't a factor here because it's a desktop form factor, but the power draw is worth noting.